Hello and welcome to my channel. This is my sewing with stretch videos. 5 days, 5 videos, all about sewing with stretch and making t-shirts. So let's get going. This is the first video, and this video is all about cutting out and laying out. So you're going to meet some of my favourite tools, and I'm going to show you the process of cutting out a t-shirt. This whole series is based on a video I did a few weeks ago about cloning my favourite t-shirts. So if you haven't seen that and you want to see how I got to the point of having a pattern, then hop on over there, there'll be a link down below. Otherwise, carry on. So before we get into the film of me cutting out, I want to show you some of the tools that I use. Now, I have the luxury of being able to cut with a rotary cutter. This is a rotary cutter, okay? I have two. I have a little baby one and I have a big one. They're both by the brand Alpha. I think you can maybe see that a little bit on there. There are other brands to rotary cutters, so I'll link down below to Amazon so you can have a look at different ones. This is the only type I've ever used. These are great. There are others that have different shape handles that claim to be more ergonomic. That's fine. There are some essential safety features, which is this red button. So when you press it, it doesn't open. It does open, and you can also lock it open. Because the thing about rotary cutters is that they are very, very sharp. And it's quite easy when you're learning to slip, to go further than you meant to. So never ever put your hand in front of where you're cutting, because bad things might happen. Always be sure you're aware of whether the blade is locked or not, because sometimes you want to be able to retract it and other times you won't. Now, you cannot use a rotary cutter. You literally cannot use it without one other essential thing, and that is a cutting mat. Now, my cutting mat is over here at the moment. Here it is. And I actually have two. I have two so that I can lay out really big projects. This one is 24 inches, I believe. So 23 inches along the small side, and I think it's 40 inches. I think it's 23 by 40, but again, there will be a link down below. You absolutely cannot use a rotary cutter without a cutting mat, because you have to put you have to cut onto something, and any other surface would either dull the blade. So if you used cardboard or wood or anything like that underneath that you didn't mind damaging, it would still dull the blade. And if you did mind damaging the surface underneath, you will damage the surface underneath if you don't have a cutting mat. So that is worth knowing. So I know that it's not a cheap solution. However, I cut every single project always, no matter what the fabric, no matter what I'm doing, with a rotary cutter these days. I just find it is so much more accurate. It's so much easier once you know how. So if you have a birthday coming up, or if you can afford it, I strongly recommend you make the investment, because I just love it. Another item you will see me use is this, a quilting ruler. I have these in a couple of sizes. This is 24 inches by 6.5, and I have one that is half size. And they are fantastic because they are see-through, although they reflect, and they are marked, and they are flat, and they have straight edges. It's those qualities that make them really useful for cutting out, and you'll see how I use them in the video. I actually even just use them as a weight, as a flat surface. Another tool, this is quite a tool heavy video, is weights. Okay, so these are my weights. These are my pattern weights, and these are Alpha branded weights again, and they have the spikes on the bottom, which helps them not to shift when you're cutting out. However, if you've ever seen anyone else using rotary cutters, these are, I don't know why, but these are really hard to buy. So if I can find a link to them, I'll put a link to them. They're also really expensive. Mine were a birthday present. Inexplicably expensive, I think. And you can use anything heavy. So you can use a tin of beans, you could use stones. People sell really pretty pattern weights. I've seen them in the shape of donuts. Cool plan. So you don't need these, but you do need some kind of weight to keep your patterns still. And again, in the video to come, you will see how I use them. So let's get into the video of how I cut out my fabric. What I'm showing you first is cutting out the sleeves. I actually usually do this after the body, but this piece of film is more informative. So I'm laying out the pattern piece, and then I'm using my quilting ruler here to pick out the grain line in the knit fabric, which is very difficult to see on camera, especially from this distance, but I'm looking for the line of the knit stitches in the fabric and making sure that the edge of that ruler lined up with the grain line on my pattern piece, and then putting my weights on top of there and using the ruler to keep the pattern piece flat because it's conveniently the right size. Now I'm running my rotary cutter around the pattern piece, taking care to be right up at the edge of the paper but not cutting off the paper. And as you can see, I have a habit or a technique of I draw the fabric away as I cut. You have to be careful while you're doing this, and it's not the way to start learning how to use a rotary cutter. But if you can get the pressure right and not pull the fabric until after it's cut, because if you did that you would distort the fabric, if you can get the pressure right, it means that you make sure that the rotary cutter goes through the whole of the fabric and you get a really clean cut. But it's something that does take a little bit of practice. So I'm going to move across now and do the second sleeve, which I'm going to cut upside down. And on a directionless piece of fabric like this, because there's no print that has a direction, cutting sleeves upside down is not a problem. Where you would get into a problem with a knit fabric or any fabric is if you cut one along the grain and one across the grain. That wouldn't work. You need to be consistent with the direction. And unless you can absolutely you can't help it, you always cut along the grain. So again, I'm lining up the grain line. I am making sure that the dot and cross pattern is at the edge of my ruler and that the opposite edge of my ruler is exactly parallel with the knit direction on my fabric. Then again, I'm using the ruler to keep the pattern piece still and using a weight on the end just to get the curve of the sleeve cap to stay still. And now I'm running around. This piece of film is now running at double speed, so don't think that I've gone turbo speed on you. That's double the speed of real life. It's best to do the curves in one go, and I prefer to clear away the pieces as I go if they're not going to be a useful size. You can see I'm drawing the fabric away where I can as I go. And there is another sleeve. So this is me cutting out the body. It's exactly the same. You lay out the piece, you put the weights on, and then you cut around, always being as close to the edge of the fabric as you can be without cutting the paper. In the small areas where the paper curls, I'm just making sure that I push the paper down so that I get the exact shape of the pattern piece. Ta-da! And that's all there is to it. As I said at the start of the video, I use a rotary cutter. If you were going to use scissors, I would suggest that you trace around and then cut separately. Or you can obviously, when I started sewing many decades ago, literally many decades ago, you would pin the pattern to the fabric and cut around, of course. Stretch fabric is just a little bit trickier because it stretches and it moves. So I wanted to show you the way I do it because I don't ever cut out with scissors anymore. But if you needed to cut out with scissors, I would hold the pattern down in the same way and then trace around it, either with, you could use a Sharpie marker because you're on the outside of the line, so you won't actually, you'll cut inside the lines when you cut with your scissors, or you could use chalk pen or whatever you would normally use as your tracing tool. So that is an option if you don't want to do the pin and cut. I didn't show you cutting out every single piece because this is more of a tips and tricks series about how to sew with stretch rather than a specific video series about a specific pattern. But just for completeness, you would obviously, if you're making a t-shirt or any kind of basic top, you would need a front, a back, 2 sleeves, and you will need a neckband. If you're doing cuffs, which I will show you later on in the series, you would need cuffs. Okay, so those are the pattern pieces that you would need. If you like to support my channel, it would be fantastic if you would subscribe, like the videos and click the notifications. Also, if you would like to give some more concrete support and you live in the UK, if you shop at Amazon or eBay, you can use the affiliate links down below to buy anything at all, just your regular shopping. I don't want to encourage you to buy things you don't need, but if you shop at those places anyway, if you go through my links, I will get a small reward and I'd be really grateful. If you would like to see the original video where I clone my t-shirt, you can click here, or if you'd like to see another video from the series, you can get the playlist here, or if you'd like another video entirely, why not click there? I will see you again in the next video. Bye for now.